Speech X do have their cultural dimensions also. Let's talk about them. Speech X and their linguistic realization, they vary from culture to culture. And we can call them that they are culturally bound. In many situations, we could draw different meanings of the same speech act when performed by different individuals. And therefore, we can say that speech acts are performed differently in different cultures, and they do construct meanings which might be different in other cultural situations. The way of expressing speech acts vary from country to country or culture to culture. For example, uh, the elements of praising somebody, uh, uh, their physical appearance or other personality factors uh, do vary from culture to culture. In a typical Indian society, for example, the expressions like "how fat you are" might be seen as a praise in a society where there are elements of malnutrition, and having some weight shows your strength, your beauty, and it may be an indicator of healthy personality. Whereas in Western societies, in most of developed Western societies, where the fashion industry has taken its way, and there are other elements of health education which probably somehow compels people to believe that probably being slim is being beautiful. So in such situations, the expression like "you look fat" or "how fat are you" might might not be the elements or the expressions which may be used to praise somebody's personality. But I may cite another example. In most Western societies, the expressions while praising a woman, the expressions like that "you look sexy" might look normal. You look hot might look normal in where you have an element of formality or element of uh, some kind of social acquaintance. Such expressions are not taken as something different, or may not be something which is objectionable, provided you have some kind of familiarity with the person or the lady you are talking to. But in our own Eastern societies, including Pakistan and India, the expressions like such expressions cannot be said even to the people you are familiar with, or even if they are said, they may be reduced to one or a certain elite section of the society. But in most sections of the societies, these expressions would be objectionable even in most cases where you have familiarity with the person. So we, we would probably praise the beauty in a different way. So we could conclude that there definitely are differences in the ways how various speech acts are performed in various cultures, and this can cause difficulties for people who belong to different cultures, especially who have to listen to or respond to in a second language. I give you an example here. You can see on your screens that the person A, who is a British woman, is talking to a person B, who is a Cuban by origin. And the British lady, person A, wants to talk to a person, Perez, who is a Cuban national. She calls Mr. Perez, who is a Cuban, and somebody who's not Perez, but who's probably an assistant to Perez. He picks up the phone, and the lady asks, "Is Mr. Perez there?" Uh, the B, who is a Cuban and assistant to Perez, he says, "Yes, he is." Then lady asks, "Can I speak to him, please?" Then he says, "Okay, wait a minute." Uh, but if you look at this conversation again, you see that the first statement, "Is Mr. Perez there?" actually was an indirect request uh, to put his call through to Mr. Perez. But the person who was listening to it was probably not familiar with the cultural dimension of this speech act. He couldn't pick he couldn't pick the indirectness of the speech act, and he just thought it as a statement, a direct statement about or an inquiry about Mr. Perez. So in such situations, the performance of a speech act is definitely affected. B only hears the interrogative with the function of direct representative. Therefore, he couldn't pick the indirect speech act embedded there. So, from this example, we can easily conclude that speech acts do have their cultural dimensions and which are very important to understand their real meanings.